Nonetheless, you saw Devontae Smith, and that kid is the real deal, the real deal. Now, whether or not he's the real deal at number 2, that will have to, be decided between now and the draft, and the Jets will have to figure it all out. Now, as far as Doug Pederson is concerned, we were here yesterday talking as if he was going to be fired.
Sure.
And then, of course, we get off the air. It's announced that he's fired.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised. I wasn't surprised when we were talking about it yesterday morning, given all the things that had gone on there. I told you that Jeffrey Lurie had been in that building for 5 days, and he had been interviewing everybody.
Sniffing around.
Including Doug Pederson. And it sounds to me, honestly, it really does sound to me like this, for whatever reason, this coach was hung out to dry. I have no idea why. It also sounds like to me, and this comes from the NFL insiders, not from me, they're all saying that, he was sick and tired of being told what to do. So, if he's sick and tired of being told what to do, who is telling him what to do?
Well, it's Howie Roseman or Jeffrey Lurie. Those are the two guys.
Somebody should take a look at Howie Roseman and take a look at his draft classes and his free agent signings, and then, maybe he's the guy that should have been run out of the building.
Can anybody say with me, J.J. Arthega-Whiteside?
My God.
Come on. He was selected right around where DK Metcalf was, right?
Right.
How's that worked out for him?
It hasn't worked out great for him.
Jalen Reagor with Justin Jefferson there. There's a million of those examples with Howie Roseman. So if you're going to call into Doug Pederson's resume, you're going to have to look into Howie Roseman's. You're absolutely right.
There's no question. And remember, he went into 2 playoff runs with backup quarterbacks, essentially, because, Josh McCown went in for an injured Carson Wentz, and then, of course, Nick Foles went in for an injured Carson Wentz. And maybe one of the greatest offensive performances in Super Bowl history and game plans and game calling by Doug Pederson against the Patriots. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It's a weird thing. I want to say I totally respect Doug. I don't know if he's going to float the boat for Jet fans. I just don't know if that's going to be the case, especially with what happened that last game against the Washington football team. And I don't know if Jet fans were happy that Giants didn't make it, or Jet fans like me as a former player, I'm not a Jet fan or a Giant fan, but were disgusted with what happened and how it happened.
Yeah, I don't really care at this point if it's going to float the boat for Jets fans, because I think the answer to that is probably no. But will it float the boat for Joe Douglas? And that's really the question. Does Joe Douglas all of a sudden see this Doug Pederson being available thing and go, wow, we lucked out? This right here is serendipity. This was supposed to happen. We fired our coach. He became available when we didn't think he was going to be available, and boom, now we've got our next head coach of the New York Jets. Or does Joe Douglas say, I like Doug a lot, but, man, he might be burnt out. This might not be the right time for him with what happened this past year. I really like some of the guys I interviewed. I want to hire my guy, even though I know Doug in Philadelphia. I want this to be my hire and something fresh. And although I love Doug, maybe he needs a year away from the game or 2 and get paid by the Eagles and then come back with a little different mindset. I don't know what Joe Douglas is thinking, but a lot of people were making the leap, just as we were prior to this happening, that this is going to be a thing. And it is a thing. It's a thing because of their relationship, and it's a thing because of Doug Pederson's resume. So I know with word association, people hear Doug Pederson and think, not a good coach. Resume says something completely different than word association. And take away last year in week 17, and you look at what he had accomplished. This doesn't happen. A guy doesn't win a Super Bowl for a franchise that's never won a Super Bowl in one of the football-hungry cities in America and then get fired 3 years later. That stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah, but there's a reason for that happening. And so you never know what goes on in all these different buildings. I have no idea what was going on between Howie Roseman and Doug Pederson. I don't know if Howie Roseman didn't think that the coaching staff was, working hard enough. Maybe they were resting on their laurels. Maybe they were just polishing their Super Bowl rings, and they figured that they had a 10-year job. I don't know any of that. The one thing I do know is that Jim Schwartz went on sabbatical for a reason. And I told you that was the thing that made me think that Doug Pederson was going to get fired. So the defense coordinator kind of left on his own, and if that's happening, then he can read the tea leaves. He knows what's going on. So something happened in that building. And it usually happens between people, and there are differences of opinions. I'm sure that there are some people that wanted to keep Doug, and I'm sure there are some people that wanted to get rid of Doug. At the end of the day, Doug basically said, and this is what is being said about him in regards to the Philadelphia Eagles, is that he just didn't want to be told what to do.
Well, that to me sounds like he didn't want to do what happened in Week 17. That's what it sounds like.
That's what it makes me sound. That's what it sounds like to me too. Which means that whole fiasco in Week 17 is he took the bullet for the organization.
Right, and maybe a lot of this, and we'll find out in the coming days. We usually do. Maybe a lot of this was Doug Pederson walking in there and saying, "Hey, if we're going to go forward with this, this cannot continue in this way." And then Jeffrey Lurie saying, "All right, sorry, this isn't working out for us. There's too much tension. There's too much weirdness. You have to go." Like, I don't want to. There's too much of an assumption that has been made, and I think not everybody's doing this, but a lot of people are, that Doug Pederson threw that game in Week 17, and it embarrassed the Philadelphia Eagles so much that the owner had to fire him. I don't think that's what's going on. I don't think that Doug Pederson wanted to have that unfold the way that it did. I think that he was probably told by someone who was making that draft pick or someone who's the owner of that team, what the hell are we trying to win this game for? It puts us in a better position going forward. And he listened, and then he never, ever threw anybody under the bus in post-game news conferences after that. As you mentioned, he took the bullet for that team, and he looked like the clown. I really wonder if he was.
You know, and the other thing, too, is to wonder about the relationship between Carson Wentz and Doug Pederson. You know, can that be, or could that have been repaired? We'll never find out. Is there really a schism between the two guys? Does Jeffrey Lurie think that, Carson Wentz is the quarterback of the future? Now, he said yesterday, I don't make that decision. That decision comes from the football people. The owner doesn't make that decision. All I know is that we have a dedicated kid that really does care, and that's part of the equation, and I believe in the kid. So that maybe the kid's going to stay there, and maybe they just feel like they need another coach. Maybe this is Eric Bieniemy's place because he'll come off of Andy Reid's staff. And Andy Reid, obviously, ties to Philadelphia. That's how Doug Pederson got this job. So maybe that's the next guy that's going to take over for Philadelphia. But as far as Doug Pederson is concerned, I'm just trying to think of the first day press conference with him announced as the Jet head coach and how that's going to go. I think he'll handle it fine.
I'm sure he will. I mean, the guy's been in Philadelphia, too. I mean, this is what is so amazing to me. Now, we had a conversation about this when you were off about Doug Pederson because, when I thought about it, when Jerry said he was coaching for his job going into Week 17, this was before all of that happened, I said, if you look at Doug Pederson, if he's available, a lot of the things we have talked about, Doug Pederson has. So what is it about Doug Pederson at face value that people really dislike? Because I had a Jet fan text me yesterday, a friend of mine, said if Doug Pederson is hired, then that's it for him. He feels like the passion for the Jets is gone in him.
Who does he want?
So that's what I asked him. And you know what his answer was? I don't know. I just don't want another retread coach who just got fired because it's in their head that another Adam Gase is on the horizon with Doug Pederson. But think about the things that we had talked about. Success, having been a head coach, someone who can play in a market like New York. This guy just came out of Philadelphia. Now, I understand it didn't work out in the end, but he knows how to deal with a crazy media and a crazy fan base because he just came out of one of the craziest in the country. So if we were just lining up pros and cons of what Doug Pederson has done, there's a lot in the pro column. I just want the people who really dislike Doug Pederson, tell me why. What is it about when you hear Doug Pederson that the reaction is, ugh, I don't like Doug Pederson. What is it about him? Is it his personality? Is it his aura? Is it all about Week 17, which we don't even know the answers to?
I'll tell you one thing. He'll be a much better communicator than Adam Gase was. I can tell you that.
Well, I mean, listen, there's been, lots of
people. And that's a big part of this whole thing. Standing up in front of the media, standing up in front of your owner and, of course, your fan base and giving them the confidence that you could be the guy to turn it around. He's a lot like my buddy Frank. I mean, they both were backup quarterbacks in the league. They're both very, very quiet guys. They don't promote themselves. They're not out there looking for the next job. I can tell you that. And they're very loyal to the people that either they work for or who work for them. And that has been, their kind of reputations all through their coaching lives.
I mean, the people who have come through here as Jets head coach in recent memory, after Rex Ryan, we're talking about Todd Bowles and Adam Gase. And Doug Pederson somehow is just off-putting to you? Like Doug Pederson makes your stomach turn if you're a Jet fan after going through Todd Bowles and Adam Gase?
Yeah, but that's the Jet fan.
I understand, but you said it, though. Like, even you said it, that I don't think it's going to float the boat for Jets fans. But why?
I just think that I believe that they believe he's a flatliner and that they don't think that he's like the Vince Lombardi type and that he has all the energy and the way that this and the way this whole thing kind of ended here. In Philadelphia is not a good look for him. I just think that. What if we find out? What if we find I didn't want to do that in Week 17?
Oh,
I'd love to find that out. Believe me, I would love to find that out.
Do you think that changes it for Jet fans too?
It would change it for me. I know that.
Of course it would. So I mean, if that's part of it, see, that shouldn't be. I like to talk about it outside of Week 17 because one day we'll find out what that is.
I know their team was terrible, and they had so many injuries on that team. And Carson Wentz was out there trying to make every single play all by himself. And I always felt like, I don't know who's ever in Carson's ear is not doing a good job holding him accountable for the decisions he's making. And I'm sure that they sat down with him. I'm sure that they tried to talk to him. But for some reason, it sounds like there is an impasse between Carson Wentz and Doug Pederson. Maybe they want to keep Carson Wentz and they want to get the next guy in there to get the best out of him.
So that's another thing that I have heard from people on Doug Pederson, which I don't know if it's a straw man argument or it's real, is that Doug Pederson ruined Carson Wentz. Like, Howie Roseman ruined Carson Wentz. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's my point, is that's one of the criticisms with Doug Pederson. Okay, well, Doug Pederson was also the head coach when he was on his way to an MVP season. Doug Pederson was also the head coach when he had to go to the playoffs and win with backup quarterbacks. Yeah. Isn't that a sign of, that's like coach of the year stuff? When people determine who the coach of the year is, it's never the best team. It's the guy who did more with less. That's what it is. So the guy who somehow won a bunch of games without a quarterback or somebody got hurt or a rash of injuries.
Andy Reid and Matt LaFleur are not getting Coach of the Year this year.
It's always
going to be Kevin Stefanski who basically took 20 years of Browns' futility and turned it around and got them into the playoffs.
Right. So here we are with an organization in the Philadelphia Eagles that had never won a Super Bowl, that had one of the most passionate fan bases in all of football, and was able to deliver that. Now, I also hear some of these things that I don't know are real arguments or not, because this is why I keep asking, why do you hate Doug Pederson so much? Like, is there a real validity to that, or the idea of Doug Pederson from Jets fans, is that it was all the assistant coaches. That's what it was. It was all the assistant coaches, and because the assistants left, because Frank Reich left, then everything just fell apart for Doug Pederson. Like, you can tell me that obviously Frank Reich had a great relationship with Carson Wentz and did a really nice job there in Philadelphia. But you can't tell me it's all the assistants.
And just so you know,
just the assistants that won a Super Bowl.
And just so you know, Doug he's a very aggressive coach. A lot of fourth down going for it. I think that the Philadelphia Eagle franchise is a big analytic franchise, and the owner's big into analytics. And there may have been some knocking of heads about whether or not to go for things and stuff like that, maybe that he didn't want to do, but it was expected of him to do it on the field. Look, and again, I told you yesterday, and I'll say it again today, Joe Douglas knows what went on in that building.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. So if Joe Douglas comes on tomorrow and says, you know what, we're going to hire Doug Pederson, then I have to trust Joe Douglas's. I have to trust his judgment, because he knows the man, he knows that building down there, and he probably has intimate knowledge as to what has gone on down there.
Yeah, 100%. There's no way.
If he doesn't hire Doug Pederson, that's also could be a sign.
It lets you know what's going on. Yeah, and is Doug Pederson the first choice I thought of when the Jets fired Adam Gase, thinking that he may be available? No, it's not. Is it someone that is the home run hire that we talked about, like a Bill Cowher stepping in and taking over, an alpha male and personality for days? No, it's not. But the thing that I'm fighting against, and I'm fully aware of all things Doug Pederson, we've talked about it, The idea that I'm fighting against is this is the worst idea ever. How could you hire Doug Pederson after he got fired? It's Adam Gase all over again. You can't put those two guys in the same sentence.
No. Now, who said that? You've heard this? You've seen this on Twitter?
Well, first of all, when we talked about it with Jerry, overwhelming no's. Al put a poll up yesterday with Doug Pederson. Al, do you have the results of that poll by any chance?
Yeah, it was like 72% against Doug Pederson.
Against Doug Pederson. I had one of my best friends, a Jet fan, texted me yesterday that he's willing to give up his fandom if they hire Doug Pederson. So this isn't just one or two people saying this. This is now a thing. And I know both Craig and Evan, in listening to them yesterday as well, neither one of them want Doug Pederson either as Jets fans. So
who do they want?
Urban Meyer, I guess, is something they've been calling for. They've been calling for Urban Meyer. Yes, I think that Evan believes that that's not going to happen. So, but I'm with you in the sense of, and one of the things that I think that I've learned to do a little bit more since sitting next to you, is a look into the inner workings of these organizations.
Okay,
and to see I try to see what they see. And when a guy like Doug Pederson comes available, Joe Douglas is not just going to say, I know Doug, that's my friend, I'm going to give him the job. That's not the way it works. But what he's going to see is a candidate that's resume is stronger than just about everybody that he's interviewed to this point. And you cannot deny that. That is a fact. His resume, outside of maybe Marvin Lewis, and Marvin Lewis went to the playoffs a bunch of times, had success, but never won a Super Bowl. Everybody else that he's interviewed doesn't even come close to what Doug Pederson has already done in the NFL as a head coach. So just think about that. It is not the worst idea in the world. And if you want to go down unknown coordinator carousel alley again, go for it. Maybe roll the dice again.
And just remember, Doug Pederson comes from Andy Reid. He was with Andy Reid in Philadelphia. Was with Andy Reid in Kansas City. Had success at both places, even though Andy never went to the Super Bowl. Won the Super Bowl, but he was there, a part of that. And he was also part of the success that Andy had with Alex Smith out there in Kansas City. So he has been a very successful coach everywhere he has been. Just so everybody understands that. And what happened to him in Philadelphia, I don't know. I don't know all the particulars. All I know is that something in that building was not right. And something in that building I don't feel like has been right for 2 years.
And that doesn't necessarily have to be all his fault either.
No, it just could be a difference of opinion. It could be a draft pick. It could be a free agent signing. It could be, it could be like Howie Roseman saying, I run the team. I give you the players. You have no say in that. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're trying to stay away from here, too.
100%.
You want the reason I think John Mara is keeping Dave Gettleman, which I believe he should, is because it looked like in the eyes of John Mara that both his head coach, Joe Judge, and his general manager, Dave Gettleman, get along. And they see the game the same way, which is why you want to keep continuity.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the red bell so you're notified when we have new content.